Welcome to the Voice of Business. This program is sponsored by the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce, which provides services for Beverly, Hamilton, and Wenham, as well as Danvers. I'm your host, John King, president of Headway Strategies, and I'll be working with the two guests I have for this show. Today we have two individuals who are going to talk about a fundamental problem that could be facing many of the chamber members who are small business owners and own a family business. First, we have Rick McDonald. Rick is president and founder of the U.S. Advisory Group. He's got a 34-year wealth management firm that just recently relocated to Beverly. And he has a project that he's starting, which is really called the Family Business Project. It's an offering from his firm that we'll be talking about. Steve Vesey is founder of Vesey and Weeks. He's now retired from Vesey and Weeks, yes, but because he planned ahead, he's starting another business which he calls Business Legacy Strategies, which is to help business transition from owning a business, operating a business, into actually retiring and going on and doing something else. He's an expert in business valuation space, and he'll be a support in the family business project. So let's just talk about what got us to the point where we have this family business project. Why is it important, and what's the nature of causing it all to come down right now?
Sure. Well, think of it as a perfect storm. 75% of the small business owners and lower middle market business owners are baby boomers. Their ages run from 58 to 74 years old. In that space, most of those people are inadequately prepared to retire. The question is, and the problem is, that their businesses are not necessarily adequately set up to be able to be sold, to provide enough capital to continue the lifestyle for which the business currently is providing them. So they haven't been sold. And unless something happens, something changes, there's going to be a big sucking noise as these people, their ages start to catch up with them, because time is not their friend.
Okay, so what do we do about it?
Well, the first thing we need to do is be really clear about what is it you're looking to accomplish. What are your goals with regard to the next stage of your life, the next stage of the business life for the family? And it's not that complicated. It's lifestyle income. It's taking care of other family members to the extent you need to, want to, or desire to, whether it's grandkids' education, it's a second home or not, or whatever the things are that are going to make you feel like you've lived your life the way you wanted to. And you've got to it's very fundamental, make the list. It's financial planning 101. What is it you need to accomplish to be able to move on to the next level? Once you've done that, given that most business owners own 80-90% of their net worth in a micro-cap illiquid stock called their family business, they need to know what the devil the thing is worth. And that's where Steve comes in.
Okay. So I mean, the things that you're talking about are really the other stuff that comes out of the family business, right? In terms of trips and other
you need to be really clear about what do you want to have happen, and what do you want to do on the next stage of your life. Now that you're seeing 60, 65, 70 years old, what does the rest of this look like? And then what's the role of the family business to perpetuate that, to support that?
Okay.
Because once the business is sold, or you've transitioned out of the business, you're on your own here. There's no business checkbook to write a check out because you're going away for the weekend. So what we're trying to do here, we're trying to identify what the gap is. And as Rick's saying, we know what you're spending, and now we need to take a hard look at what do you have? What have you accumulated? Retirement, savings, whatever, the different sources of cash flow. And how are we going to fill that gap? And the business owner has been led to believe by some of his advisors, don't worry about it, we'll sell the business and you'll be fine. Well, in the valuation arena, you ask a business owner what's his business worth, and he's going to tell you a number that's, quite frankly, twice the number that it really is worth. And that creates a false sense of security for them. So what we're trying to do is come in and give them a realistic number of what this value is. And the value is driven by EBITDA, and that's a term you're going to hear a lot of. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, and the capitalization rate, or the multiple. And those are the two things we're working on here. Is we're trying to increase the EBITDA, by, pump the brakes on the stuff you're doing here. Put the money in the company. Let the company balances grow. Be a responsible business owner, because this is the most important task you have for the next 3 or 4 years. And the other piece of it is taking a look at the multiples. And the multiples are driven very, very strongly by your gross sales, the type of business you're in, the number of your employees, the skill set of your employees, how deep your bench is, just a whole bunch of things that will drive this rate. And when we get all through all these calculations and things, what we end up doing is taking this restated EBITDA by taking the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, restating the income statements to make that number hopefully as high as possible, then work through the capitalization rate. And the capitalization rate is the lower the rate, the higher the multiple, the higher the rate, the lower the multiple. Come up with a number. And in most cases, that number is with a reasonable return on the number, say a 5 or 6% return on it, is not great enough to fund the gap.
Of what you plan for retirement.
And that's the problem.
Okay.
Let's give an example, because that's confusing. It's a lot of stuff. Sometimes, for a lot of folks, it's like trying to take a sip of water out of a fire hydrant. You've got a business, and let's say that you're making a couple of $100,000 on it, and obviously you've got to be paying taxes on an whatever your structure is. You also, most business owners in this space, you're having to provide cash flow. You're doing cash flow financing. Your working capital is all born and generated by the business. So let's use as an example what Steve's talking about with EBITDA. It's very, very important that we understand what EBITDA is. So you have to recast your income statement. All of the monies that you take as an owner go back into the business, because you're gone. A buyer's looking at this and say,
right.
okay, you're not here. So if I'm making $200,000, if I have, if I'm putting a bunch of, I've got kids on cell phones with their cell phone plans on here, if I got perks over here, I'm slipping 5 or 10 grand to my grandkids here for, doing some, all of that stuff goes back into the balance sheet. And what we want to do is figure out what is that seller's discretionary earnings. Okay? So let's say, for an example, to try to make this simple, let's say you're making a couple of $100,000. You've got taxes on a couple of $100,000 at the end of the year, taxes, fees, all that kind of whatevers. And you still have another, $100,000, whatever it may be, $200,000 left over for working capital. And so add all that back in, and let's say, for example, you come up with a number of, like, say, $700,000. Okay, that's good. That's step one. Then we go back to this multiple number. So what is the multiple a buyer's willing to pay for that $700,000 of net earnings? So maybe, and it usually might range for small business owners, 4 to 6 times, depending upon a number of factors. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because that's so vital. But let's say that they'll give you 4 times your earnings. Well, 4 times 700,000, $2.8 million. Herein lies the problem. You're making $200,000. You sell your business, if you could sell it, for $2.8 million. You're going to lose 25 to 30% in taxes and transaction costs and all that. So the point of it is, now you're down to less than $2 million to generate $200,000 in income. You're not going to sell the business, because you're not going to support your lifestyle.
Right.
And so therefore, your head is in the sand, in denial for the problem. And the problem is it's not something to ignore. You're not getting younger. And we need to address it. And we need to focus on creating enough value to fund this gap.
Right.
And the gap is going to be funded either by robust funding of personal assets and retirement plans, or other different things that you've been kind of just giving short shift to in your 401ks and this and that, because you don't want to pay a lot of money out to employees and all. That's you got to change that mindset. More importantly, we have to focus on the EBITDA and the multiple. So for example, if I can come in and show you how to move your EBITDA from $700,000 to $1 million, and clean up your operation with respect to empowering key employees for retention, building a better standard operating procedure, so that and building up your recurring revenue modeling, so that a buyer looks at all of this and says, aha, I'm more confident that the stream of income I'm buying is going to be there and is stronger.
Right.
That I might pay 5, God forbid, 6 times earnings.
Right.
So let's do that math. If I only go from $700 to $1 million in EBITDA, and I move you from 4 to 5 multiple, let alone 6. 5 times $1 million is $5 million valuation,
right.
not 2.8 million. These numbers, the inherent leverage in cleaning up your business for sale is huge,
Yeah.
and we need to understand that.
Well, I think there's certainly that, understanding where you are, but then the other question is, what's the time frame that I have to start working on this?
That's a great question. Typically, it's anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. It really depends upon the nature of the business, the awareness, support, and motivation of the owner, and the business you're in. I mean, there are certain businesses that can be turning much more agilely, much more quicker than others. A number of employees you have, the relationship you have with your key employees. There's a lot that goes into this.
But I mean, I would think that, bringing it up to level of technology, during the break, we talked about the business that didn't have a computer.
Right.
Right? So they're probably on OneWrite system. The audience probably doesn't know what a OneWrite system is, but a OneWrite system was an early way of recording checks as you wrote them at the same time.
You know, John, the challenge here is it's really simple, but it's difficult. The excitement you had when you started your business, and think back to when we all started our businesses, and I remember the first day, I couldn't wait to get in, this beautiful sunrise, and it was the most exciting day of my life, and I had energy. You need that same energy at age 68 or 70 to help you structure this to get out. And that's a real challenge. I'm a lot more tired than I was 10 years ago. and it happens to all of us. But you have, this is why this is such an exciting concept, and I'm thrilled that Rick has come up with this, because the Family Business Project, it's more than just businesses with family members in it. It's the fact that every business owner, his family is impacted by his business, and this recognizes that, and it's an exciting concept.
So if we know what the goal is, we know what we need to accomplish to be able to ride off into the sunset on our terms financially. We have a reasonably good sense of what our current business is worth.
Right.
And other ancillary assets and Social Security. I have all that in there. We can figure out where the value of the business is and where it needs to get to.
In order to support.
So the question is, how do we increase value? What's realistic to increase value over a realistic time frame? And there are 4 or 5 very, very key elements of increasing value to a seller, in the seller's eye. Now, always remember, you may think your business is worth $5 million. What is it worth? What does it look like to the seller? Not you. You're biased. I've never met a business owner who underestimated the value of his business. But what's the value in the eyes of the potential buyer? And who will be the buyer? What kind of buyer are you looking to sell to?
So let's talk about the types of buyers that we could have.
Well, that's easy, because they're typically, as a generalization, they're typically 5 ultimate exits for you in your business. You're either going to sell to a family member, kids or siblings, whatever, family members. You're going to sell to key employees. You're going to sell to a financial, which is a private equity firm who's buying you for your recurring revenue streams. Or you're going to sell to a strategic, which is a competitor.
Sure.
Because very often 1 + 1 + 1 equals 5 in terms of aggregation. Or ultimately, which is more prevalent, you're going to go through a liquidation.
So what percentage of businesses go through liquidation?
Unfortunately, it's about 60 to 75%.
That's a big number.
It's a huge number.
Big number.
And it's not only is it a big, daunting number, which is going to have great stress over the family,
Sure.
let alone the surviving spouse.
Sure.
If you're going through liquidation because the owner just had a very large health issue or mortality, but it also is a very, very big problem for your employees. 70% of the workforce is employed in small businesses.
Right.
When those businesses go through liquidation, those people are out of a job.
They're out of a job, sure.
So it has gargantuan ramifications across the board.
And translate that back in what you said at the very beginning was a perfect storm. Which, if you think about that, if you've got all those businesses that potentially could go through liquidation if they don't,
it's a significant problem for the economy.
On the economy.
It's a personal issue, it's a family issue, and it's an economic issue.
Yeah.
Now, so when you look, let's break down a little bit. I wanted to expand a bit on the potential buyers. We see people all the time, oh, my kids are going to buy the business, or my employees want the business. That's terrific. Do they have the cash? because they obviously don't. They've got to come out with $3, $4, $5, $8 million, $10 million. They don't have the money. And so you as an owner have got to take the probability, if that's the route you're going to go, in taking back an awful lot of paper. And so your largest investment is going to be family members or key employees to continue what you've built so that you can maintain your retirement. There's inherently a lot of risk with respect to that. The other side is this: can the business survive profitably with that debt load?
Right. Yep. And the fact that you've got all this paper out.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. But what happens, because I interrupt, so all of a sudden now, a business has $2 or $3 million of debt it never had before on its books.
Or more.
And that has to be serviced. So
there's a lot of weight in it. The ideal buyer is always a strategic buyer with a financial behind it. The question is, now, this is reverse engineer this. What do you need to look like for a competitor who's got some money to want to buy you? If you can figure that out, now we know what the thing needs to look like. Now we go into moving out to the 4 value creation strategies.
You're dressing it up. I mean, you're dressing it up and you're making it operational. You're staging it.
So what do you need to do? Number one, it sounds obvious, but no one pays attention. We have to make you, the business owner, operationally irrelevant. Because when you sell it on Friday and you do not show up on Monday, is that a positive or a negative to the company? I mean, obviously, if you're important to the company, you're not going to show up again.
Right.
That's not a good thing.
Right.
We need to make you operationally irrelevant. We have to empower your key employees and retain those employees.
Right.
Now, that's number one. Number two, we need to increase our training modules and our standard operating procedures, document them, so the business, again, I mentioned this earlier, the buyer looks at this and says, aha, I have much greater confidence that what you're earning today, I'll continue to earn when I step in. We need to beef up our recurring revenue generators. These are the kind of things that we step in and help business owners get in place to begin to get this company shipshape and ready for prime time.
So you're highlighting some of the things about the value creation strategies that you try to work with.
Right.
And that, I think, at one point we were talking about making yourself irrelevant for the business.
That you have to be able to pass on your knowledge to the employees, to the people who run the business. Having it between your ears doesn't do you any good. It's like the chef passing with all the recipes between his ears. Right. And now what do you do when you pick up the pieces? And there has to be standard operating procedures. A well-run business is one that the owner doesn't show up on Monday, and there's protocol and there's processes in place that the next level of management knows what to do.
Okay.
Now here's the neat thing about this. This is how your business should be running regardless. You haven't had the stress of getting it up there because it's been working, but it's been working on 6 cylinders, not 8. But 6 has done fine for you. Now we have to move it to the next level to package it so you fill that gap, because the gap still, going back to what we talked about earlier, is the goal. Now, a lot of times, let's be realistic, a lot of times not everyone's going to sell for the number they need to sell for to make it work. But interestingly, their goals should be to get the company running where they're operationally irrelevant.
Right.
And be semi-retired.
Right.
Because that's, if you can't get the number you need and walk away, then what are we going to do? We can't ignore the realities. Now what we have to do is get the company running by itself as much as possible. And yes, you might feel burnout, but if you're only showing up 1 or 2 days a week, that's a lot less burnout than showing up 6 days a week.
Right.
And we need to get the company running where you're not, every single stage, every decision isn't on your shoulders. And you're still taking a salary out, and that will suffice for the time being. It won't solve all the problems. I'd be worried about your spouse at that case. Because when you pass, I don't know whether or not at that point, there needs to be a succession plan, but it will probably, in that instance, be the key employees. And how that's worked out with your spouse, if that's how things would shape up, that's an interesting dilemma that has to be addressed. But we are pushing for making headway into a problem that otherwise you don't have a chance of that business surviving.
Right. Well, I know that. I know you've had some examples with some of the clients that you've had in the past, Steve, where the owner of the business has passed more suddenly
Yes.
than anticipated, and the spouse ended up picking up bits and pieces, and family members were involved, and it gets pretty complicated.
It's extremely complicated, and it's daunting because in most cases, business owners don't share a lot of what's going on in their business with their spouses. They just let's have a good life, and let's educate the children and do what we want to do and make it work for ourselves. We need people's attention on this, and that's the most important thing. If people seeing this and, hey, I'm 65 years old, I own a business, I really haven't thought about this, but I think I should, and I need to make this. I want to listen to my friend Steve and Rick. This is the most important thing I have to do in the next 3 years, and that's the mindset you have to get into.
So, the default position is, most people that I run into, they know there's a problem, but lacking a solution, they just want to duck the problem.
Yeah.
There is a solution. I mean, most of this can be fixed, but the sooner you attack it, the better it's going to be.
Well, there's a lot of dynamics in there too, I think, in terms of family
absolutely.
and employees and the whole bit. So let's talk about, you had a point on family matters, which we've kind of touched on a little bit.
The family has come to rely upon what the business is as this golden goose. So the issue with the family is what are the needs of the family? If the family thinks it's going to step in, and many times that's what happens by default. Still has a problem with the spouse, but short of liquidation, maybe one or two of the kids are going to try to figure out the business, or maybe one is in the business, 2 or 3 or 4 aren't in the business, whatever it is. They want to know what's in it for them if their brother gets the business or sister gets the business. There's a number of different stress points with regard to family members. And so one of the things you need to be doing is having a discussion with the family, and a family discussion.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What am I trying to get done? What are the rules, responsibilities, accountabilities, and expectations of all family members?
So that would seem that an outside third party would be a good one to convene that meeting, or at least have the discussion to bring it out once you got something down on paper as to where you want to go.
Because business owners, we find, are very reluctant to do anything to stir up the family harmony. And moves that need to be made will stir up problems within the family if you get 3 kids and you're going to run it. Well, why is he running it, or why is she running it? It happens. And business owners, very reluctant to do anything that's going to challenge that harmony.
Yeah.
And we talk about family meetings. We use an acronym RARE, R-A-R-E, rules, accountabilities, responsibilities, and expectations. Everyone's a family members are all stakeholders in the family.
Yep.
Everyone, let's be really clear. Everyone was a stakeholder in building the family, whether it was the child whose dad missed a whole lot of Little League games, or the daughter who missed a dance recital here, or this or that. Everyone has a stake in this company. Now, how that's expressed, what expectations, the mutual expectations there are, those need to be put on the table. Everybody needs to understand what's expected, what they should expect, what accountabilities for doing things that are good or bad or otherwise. This creates at least a sense of harmony. It's like when you ran the business, you certainly shared with your employees what you expected of them.
Yep.
And they expected of you, called a paycheck. That's the same relationship you need to have with the family members. If this is going to work, if we can improve the value of the company and have a successful sale, so the mom and dad are financially in good shape and the kids are fine, that's wonderful.
Okay.
If it's going to be something less, we need to manage the stress points so Plan B is in place and everybody understands what it's all about. Because it can work.
Absolutely. So we're running a little short on time, but I wanted to try to get the takeaways of what you think are the key things that we want to communicate to our audience today. I think we've heard the word gap, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a clothing store.
Nope.
It is the gap between what you have and your ability to retire and the like. And then the other is where you're going to drive your business value up. How do you create your business value? I heard that. Semi-retirement is an alternative, right? So you're 2 days a week versus 6 or 3 or whatever it is. Handle some key customers, but really let the business run by itself. And then really figure out who your ideal buyer is. And I think of the 5 that you gave us in terms of alternatives, the strategic buyer seems to be one that might be willing to be the easier way out, if I have that right.
Strategics are good, they have the money. The ideal is the strategic standing behind the financial standing behind the strategic.
Yep.
Finding a competition, finding the 40, 45-year-old who's in your business.
In your business.
Who has
right.
the wherewithal to acquire you, merge you. That's a great candidate. Because as I said a moment ago, we coach and mentor a number of companies on the North Shore where they're going through aggregation strategies. So one in small to medium sized, if I put three or $4 million businesses together, three businesses worth $3 million, I'm not going to end up with a $9 million business. I'm probably going to end up with a $15 million business. I have economies of scale. I've got a backup. I've got a number of different ways in which I'm going to be able to drive a higher aggregated EBITDA than those three companies individually. And then I take that company, if I'm the guy who's aggregating, if I'm the 40-year-old and I buy you, the 66-year-old, I buy two of you 66-year-olds into my firm, integrate them, I'm going to turn around and take my company now and go to the next level up. Yeah. We're going to play Pac-Man and sell I've aggregated everyone at 3 million, 3 million, 3 million. Put some debt in here, put some equity in here, the whole bit, and then I want to sell for $15 million and walk away with that $6 million profit.
Right.
That's done and is being done. You look at it all around, even in Essex County, the aggregating of different businesses in similar silos is happening all around us.
Okay. And so if a business owner that's in their late 60s, early 70s, it's pretty late to get started with that. When should you get started with that?
When you're 40.
Okay.
It's
you
never
told me it was
too
only
late.
3 years, right?
Well, there's a phrase, you start with the end in mind, and that's ideally.
Okay.
But practically speaking, we need, you get when you turn 60, your 60th birthday, you own a business, the light has to go on.
It's really interesting that demographically you look at. We talk about baby boomers build companies for lifestyle.
Yeah.
Millennials build companies to sell.
I've heard that.
So you hear the phrase "built to sell." Well, we didn't do that. I say we. We're all baby boomers. We built to have lifestyle. So in terms of timing and age, I have my 40-year-old clients. They're building with a 5 or 8 or 10 year, not even probably 10 years, a 5 or 8 year horizon to be in position to sell. Okay. Ironically, they may not sell. They may find that it's working really well, and being an absentee owner is a more profitable route. But they're building to sell. We need to build to sell now.
Okay. Well, that's good advice. I think that one of the things that this is a much more detailed discussion than we could do in a half an hour. And it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of businesses to think about. And many of the chamber businesses, really, smaller businesses need to start thinking about this as we go on. So I think that's really good to at least provide this information. Hopefully it'll stir up somebody's mind to sit down and do something about this. So if members of the audience would like to contact Steve or Rick, we're going to flash their email addresses up on the screen here at some point, and you can reach out to them directly and see what makes sense for your particular situation. So one of the things that we do with the chamber here is we have a program we call Keep It Local, and Keep It Local was to subscribe to local businesses. You're a local business now. You're in Beverly, and you're just over the street in Danvers, which is also serviced by the chamber. So we like to support local businesses, so I encourage you to do that. And we have a future show coming up with Leslie Gould, who is our new director of the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce. And one of the exciting things about having her on the show will be a chance for her to share some of her thoughts about where she would like to take the chamber in the next several years. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for spending the time with me today.
John, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
And we will wrap our show now, and thank you very much for listening. If you have ideas for future shows, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to accommodate you. Thank you very much.